Hi, this is Pastor Kevin, and welcome back to Pastor Kevin On. And today we're looking at the media. Can we trust the media? I'll be discussing my thoughts on that in just a moment. But first, I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting that subscribe button and notification bell so you'll be notified for every time a new video is uploaded. Or you can sign up for our newsletter on our website at steppingoutministries.com. And at the bottom, there's a sign up for our newsletter. And same thing there, you'll be notified as to when each video is uploaded. And also, some of the things going on with the ministry. Also, I'd like to invite you to comment down below about this video, your thoughts, and I'd love to interact with you further on the subject of today. Today, as I mentioned, we're looking at the subject of media. Can we trust the media and what they have to say? And here's my thoughts. First of all, I think that the media doesn't really do journalism these days. I remember when I was young that they would do true journalism where they would get a perspective from one side and perspective from the other side to hear both sides of the story. So then you can make your own decision on it if it's a matter of making a decision of believing something or not. And the media doesn't seem to be doing that anymore. Doesn't matter whether it's leftists or liberal media or whether it's conservative media, both sides seem to not cover both sides of the story. And yes, there's some news sources that do that, and which is good, but most news sources don't. In the States, we see CNN and some of those other ABC, NBC, all of them are very, very left-winged when it comes to their recording of news. And then Fox is pretty right-wing, conservative in their views. And it's okay for each person to have their own views. Journalists can have their own views. But when it comes to journalism, there should be the unbiased of, here's the facts of the matter, here's what this side says, here's what the other side says, and go from there and allow the person to make their own decision instead of commentary. And that's exactly what leftist media is doing, is they're trying to give commentary. And really, it's more opinion pieces than it is actual facts. We have seen many times during this whole COVID thing, during the U.S. elections, even now with this whole Great Reset, there's some conflicting informations. And so we need to be very, very careful. And I'm not saying that the whole Great Reset thing isn't a thing. It is very clear that there's just sufficient information out there. And those who are part of it aren't hiding about it anymore. They are speaking to it. And so that's not a conspiracy theory. There's conspiracy theories that go along with that still, but that's why the media, I don't think, is trustworthy these days, because they don't give us the full facts of the matter. And some of them just outright make things up. We even see that in Canadian media too. Most of the major news sources, CBC, Global, some of the other sources too, most of them go based on one side or the other, and they don't give the facts of the matter. And so I think we need to be very, very careful with the media about believing them. Again, media is not balanced. It's more leftist with most media sources. And frankly, when it comes to leftist ideology, it is not beneficial to humanity or for people in general. This whole socialist agenda that's been forced through the media is not helpful. And it's actually destroying lives and not helping people. So we need to be very careful when it comes to the media. So what does one do then to find the right information? Well, one needs to research for themselves. Look at a lot of different sources. Look at sources that are in agreement with you and others that are in disagreement. Try and weigh them out too, and seeing, does this make logical sense? Is there something behind this that could be true or not true? And to be very careful with that then too. It's important for us to do our own research and make up our own minds about any given topic that's out in the media. This whole coronavirus thing, with that too. When it comes to masks, which we'll be talking about next week, one needs to make their own decision. You need to do the homework. And don't go based on just because what the media says. And even when they say, oh, but the experts are saying, well, there's experts on both sides saying opposing things. So seek for truth, yes, but try to do a balanced approach. See what's being said on both sides. Think through it, rationalize through it as well. Try to get the right information And yes, it is very difficult to do that, but it is still possible to get at least a general sense of some of the truth out there. So just because they say, oh, the experts are saying, we see that with climate change. They say that 90 some percent say that are in agreement that global warming is happening. Well, for one, 90% of what scientists? Some of those are environmental scientists. But then again, there's not full agreement. And here's the thing. Just because there is an overwhelming majority of certain people thinking a certain way doesn't mean that they're right. That's why it's important to look for the facts and see what is right. Majority does not necessarily mean that it's correct or right. There's many times in history where the majority have been wrong. I had watched a video recently about Austria and how they're going through a hard time just before World War II, and they've petitioned the governments to have an election, and they decided to 97% of Austria voted in Hitler to be the ruler of Austria as well. And we know how that turned out. Was not good. So there are times throughout history that we've seen that the majority have been in favor of something or agreed with something, and they've been flat out wrong. And we see that in many things today too. Just because the majority says something doesn't mean that it's right. Do the research, do the proper homework, look at both sides of it. Ask yourself, is this true? And also for us as Christians, truth has to do with God's word too. Go to God's word. What does God's word tell us in regards to this situation? Or maybe if God's word doesn't speak to it, what principle in God's word do we apply to that situation or that story? The main thing, first of all, again, is truth, not opinion. It's truth first. There are some things like that are opinion things, like going, what shade of carpet should we have? Sure, that everyone has their own likes and dislikes with that. People can have their own opinions. But when it comes to the matter of facts and truth, we have to be very careful to find out that we get the right information. So again, I'm not saying that you should listen to one side or another more than another. But again, listen to the arguments. Listen to what's being said. Listen to the facts. What is plausible, what is not. And deal with the facts of the matter. Then base your opinion on the facts, not based on even the majority again. What makes sense? What science do we actually have? And by the way, science actually means knowledge. It's what we know. So we have to be careful with that too, because there's sometimes people go that, well, the science says this. Well, no, science doesn't say anything. Science is knowledge of what we know, and scientists, they're not the be-all and end-all of all knowledge, though, either. And true scientists, yes, are seeking the right answers to the questions that we have of the natural world. But then again, God created the natural world, and so God has certain law, order to his creation. But then God still works outside of that with miracles too, and so that's why it's important for us to seek the facts of the matter, to see what is the truth. Kind of have a balanced approach somewhat. And if someone's too far left wing or too far alt-right, as they say, then be cautious about those, because those kind of groups aren't very trustworthy, I find. So leftists, alt-right. I myself am very conservative in a lot of things, because I see God's word speaks to conservative points of views, and conservatism in its pure form is in line with God's word, because it respects life, it respects the rule of law, it also respects choice too. So it's also about proper balance and use of what God's given us too. So I think we need to be very careful when it comes to the media. Don't just take media at their word. And just because they say, oh, the experts say, or scientists say, no, it's okay to question and good to question still. Seek the answer yourself. Don't take their word for it. I say this when I preach too, from time to time, that don't just believe what I'm saying to you. Study God's word for yourself. See what I'm saying is true. And if I'm incorrect, then come and tell me, and we'll walk through it together. So it's important for us. Seek the truth. Don't go based on opinion pieces that the media does, because again, it's mostly opinion and rarely about facts of the matter. So do your own research. Then the last part of this is conspiracy theories. when any matter comes up, there's always conspiracy theories that go around, and we need to be very cautious. Um, does it mean we don't listen to conspiracy theories? I think there's a healthy element to hearing what's being said with that too, because sometimes some conspiracy theories are correct. The vast majority of them aren't, but from time to time they are correct. And so if you hear a conspiracy theory, okay, listen to it, weigh it, then look for the facts of the matter. But if it's so way out in left field that it's like going, yeah, I don't see that as a possibility, then it's okay to just let it go and say, I don't believe that and don't follow it. There's a conspiracy theory that I've come across recently that I'm like going, there's enough in here that it could be true, and enough of that just seems very far-fetched. So this has been kind of watching and seeing, okay, as this whole COVID thing plays out, how much of this conspiracy theory is true and how much of it is just goofiness and just made up stuff. And so it's okay to weigh those things too, and even to wait and say, I'm not willing to make this stand on it yet because I need more information first before I send this information out or I take a stand one way or another. Key point of that very thing is the whole George Floyd thing. When a lot of our world got all up in arms about George Floyd being mistreated, and don't get me wrong, again, he was mistreated by having that officer's knee on the back of his neck. That should not have happened. However, we didn't see the whole picture, the whole situation. We didn't have the video information before the incident of the police coming, and there's some video evidence that has come forward since that has shown that George Floyd was high as a kite, and so that's why the officers reacted the way they did. And again, the one who had his knee on the back of George Floyd's neck was not right. He shouldn't have done that. That was not reasonable force. But again, the media went all a blitz and saying how wrong this is. This is racism, when it had nothing to do with racism. It had to do with a man who was high as a kite, who apparently had used counterfeit bills to pay for the product he bought. And so again, this is the reason why get the facts. And again, this is the reason why we can't really trust the media, because the media doesn't always give us all the facts. So we need to do due diligence. Can we go online and seek research to find the answers? Yes. And it takes a lot of diligence and a lot of work to weed through and sift through that information, see what is right and what is wrong, what's correct and what's lies. And so I don't believe we can trust the media these days. It doesn't mean that they don't record some truth. Yeah, the media does come up with the truth sometimes. But again, what I'm saying is weigh it. Find the truth. Seek what is right and what is wrong. And if you have the knowledge of how to come about the truth, great. If you know how to do different scientific research to do it, great. If you know how to use logic to do it, great. Whatever tools are available to you to use to make the right conclusion on something is important. And frankly, when it comes to matters of law, we need to be very careful with those ones, because that's established in a court of law. And yes, human courts can make mistakes sometimes. We have seen that where they have made false decisions sometimes, or they made the wrong decision. But the main thing, though, is we need to test all things. God's word even tells us that. God's word tells us to test all things against the Spirit. To go back to God's word, and what does God's word say? That's why I have the warning at the beginning of the clip for Pastor Kevin on every week. Just because I have a certain opinion doesn't mean that you should be lazy and not study God's word on the subject. So one must go to God's word again, do the study, do the proper research, find the truth. Because, again, opinions doesn't matter. What matters is facts and truth. So, can we trust the media? Yeah. Again, I think in this day and age, no, because they're not doing true journalism. We should only take what they have to say with a grain of salt. Sometimes there's truth, but a lot of times there's things that they've just made up. As a term that's been coined in the States by the president there, called a lot of it fake news, and I would agree with him on that. There's a lot of fake news out of there, stuff that's just plumb made up, some that are lies, and some that is partly twisted information, a spin doctor on it. And so we need to be careful with the information we're listening to. Weigh it. How does it line up with God's word? And after that, is it plausible? And then from that, what information do we have that confirms or deconfirms it. So that's my opinion on media.